presented by Soundlibra.com. Explore more titles via the link in the description or at Soundlibra.com. Ignite critical and creative thinking in your children with us.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited about the series. Before we jump in, a quick note that while we're talking about child development, we aren't doctors or psychologists, so treat this as educational and not medical advice. We're going to dive deep into how to nurture these essential skills in kids, starting right from the beginning.
Absolutely, Lisa. And this first episode is all about the absolute bedrock of both critical and creative thinking, curiosity. It's that innate drive that makes a toddler poke at a button or a child stare at the stars. We want to explore how to fan that flame.
That's right, Alex. We're not teaching kids how to think yet, so much as we're encouraging them to want to think. And that all starts with curiosity. Think about it. Every great discovery, every invention, every brilliant idea, it all began with someone asking, why, or what if?
Exactly. Children are born with an incredible capacity for wonder. They're constantly observing, questioning, and trying to make sense of the world around them. Our role as parents and educators is not to dampen that, but to amplify it. We want to create environments where their natural curiosity is not just tolerated, but celebrated.
So, how do we do that, Alex? How do we go from a child asking, why is the sky blue, to them actively seeking answers and exploring new ideas?
It starts with how we respond to those why questions. Often, as adults, we're busy. We might give a quick, one-word answer, or even tell them to stop asking so many questions. But that's a missed opportunity. When a child asks why, it's an invitation to explore together.
Oh, I can see that. Instead of just saying, because that's how it is, we could turn it back. Like, that's a great question. Why do you think the sky is blue?
Precisely. You're not dismissing the question. You're validating it and encouraging them to engage their own thinking process. You're essentially saying, your question is important and your thoughts about it are valuable. This is the first step in shifting from passively receiving information to actively constructing knowledge. It's about empowering them to become their own investigators.
I love that framing. Empowering them to become investigators. So, it's not just about answering questions, but about guiding them to find their own answers. This also means creating opportunities for them to explore without a specific goal in mind, right? Just letting them tinker and discover.
Absolutely. Think about a child playing with blocks. They aren't told they need to build a castle. They just start stacking, experimenting with balance, seeing what happens when they put a large block on top of a small one. That's pure discovery driven by curiosity. We need to provide safe spaces for that kind of open-ended exploration. This could be a box of assorted craft supplies, a nature walk with no agenda, or even just letting them experiment with cooking ingredients under supervision.
So, it's about offering the tools and the time for exploration. And when they do come up with something interesting or a surprising outcome occurs, what's the best way to react?
That's where we step in to amplify. Instead of just saying, oh, that's nice, we can ask follow-up questions that encourage reflection. Wow, look how that tower wobbles. What do you think makes it do that? Or that's an interesting color combination you chose for your painting. What are you thinking about when you pick those colors? These questions prompt them to articulate their process and their reasoning.
It's like you're helping them narrate their own discoveries. And by doing so, they start to value their own thought processes.
Exactly. We're building their confidence in their own ability to explore and understand. This is crucial because later, when they face more complex problems, they'll have that ingrained habit of curiosity, that willingness to poke around and seek understanding. It's this foundation of curiosity that will fuel their desire to learn and solve.
And for parents who might feel like they don't have enough time, or perhaps they don't feel like the most creative or curious person themselves, what advice would you give?
That's a common concern, but the beauty is that this isn't about being an expert. It's about being a co-explorer. You don't need to have all the answers. In fact, it's often better if you don't. When you say, I don't know, let's find out together, you're modeling intellectual humility and the process of seeking knowledge. Many online resources, libraries, and even simple observation of nature can become your shared learning tools. It's the shared journey that matters.
Atzo Explorer.
I like that. It takes the pressure off and makes it more like an adventure. So, let's recap for our listeners. We've talked about the innate curiosity children possess. We've stressed the importance of responding to their why questions not just with answers, but with further questions that encourage their thinking. And finally, we've emphasized creating environments for open-ended exploration and providing opportunities for discovery.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. This foundational belief that curiosity is the engine of all learning and problem solving is what we'll build upon throughout this series. We want to empower children to ask more questions, to embrace the unknown, and to see challenges not as roadblocks, but as invitations to explore.
It really is the spark that ignites everything else. I'm already excited for what's coming up.
Me too. So, that's a wrap on episode 1. Next episode, Embracing the Mess, the Power of Mistakes and Failure. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Raise Problem Solvers, Teach Critical Creative Thinking. Last time, we ignited the spark of curiosity. Now, let's tackle something that often feels like the opposite of success: mistakes and failure.
Oh, failure. That word can feel so heavy, can it? It's like a big red stop sign for progress. I know for myself, and I'm sure many parents listening can relate, there's a natural instinct to want to shield our children from ever failing. We want them to succeed, to get it right the first time. But you're saying this instinct might actually be holding them back.
Exactly, Lisa. It's a really common and understandable perspective. We see failure as the end of the road. But in reality, especially when we're talking about fostering critical and creative thinking, mistakes are not just unavoidable. They are essential. Think of it this way. If you never messed up, how would you ever learn to do something new? Imagine trying to learn to ride a bike. You'll wobble, you'll probably fall. Each tumble teaches your body something about balance, about steering. If you never fell, you'd never truly master it.
That's a great analogy. So, rather than seeing mistakes as a sign of inadequacy, we should view them as stepping stones. But how do we shift that mindset, both for ourselves as parents and for our kids? Because a child who is afraid of making a mistake might just avoid trying altogether.
That's the crucial challenge. The first step is for us, the adults, to reframe our own relationship with failure. We often associate failure with shame or a lack of intelligence. But what if we started seeing it as data? Every attempt that doesn't yield the desired result gives us valuable information. It tells us what didn't work and why. This information is gold for problem solving.
Data. I like that. So instead of, oh no, you failed, it's more like, okay, that approach didn't work. What did we learn from it?
Precisely. And that leads to creating a safe environment. Our children need to feel secure enough to experiment, to try things where the outcome isn't guaranteed. This means responding to mistakes with curiosity rather than criticism. When something goes wrong, instead of sighing or expressing disappointment, ask questions. What happened there? What did you notice when that occurred? What do you think we could try differently next time?
So it's about peeling back the layers of the mistake to understand it, rather than just focusing on the negative outcome. This sounds like it builds resilience, too. If a child knows that making a mistake won't lead to harsh judgment, they're more likely to pick themselves up and try again.
Absolutely. Resilience is a direct byproduct of embracing the mess. When we allow our children to struggle a little, to work through a problem, even when they falter, they build an inner strength. They learn that they can overcome obstacles. If we always swoop in to fix things, they don't develop that internal compass that confidence in their ability to handle challenges. It's like building muscles. You can't build strong muscles by just watching someone else lift weights. You have to do the lifting yourself, even when it's hard.
And for parents, this can be really tough. It feels like we're letting them down if we don't intervene. Can you give us some practical ways to encourage this mindset?
Certainly, one of the most effective strategies is to model it. Talk about your own mistakes. Share times when you tried something and it didn't work out as planned. Explain what you learned from it and how you adjusted your approach. This normalizes failure for your children and shows them that it's a part of life, a part of learning.
That's powerful. So, sharing our own vulnerabilities makes it safer for them to share theirs.
Yes, another practical tip is to focus on effort and process, not just the final result. Praise their persistence, their willingness to try different things, their creative energy, even if the experiment doesn't lead to a perfect outcome. Words like, I really admire how you kept trying when that didn't work, or it was so interesting to see all the different ways you approached that problem, are incredibly valuable.
That puts the emphasis on growth and learning, doesn't it? It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly. And it's also about distinguishing between a mistake and a lack of effort. There's a difference between trying something, failing, and learning versus not trying at all or not paying attention. We want to encourage the former while addressing the latter constructively. So, if a child is consistently making errors due to inattention, that's a different conversation about focus and strategy. But if they're putting in effort and still encountering setbacks, that's where we foster that growth mindset.
So, to recap, we're reframing mistakes as valuable data points, creating a safe space for experimentation by responding with curiosity and support, building resilience through overcoming challenges, and modeling a healthy relationship with failure ourselves.
You've got it. And remember, this isn't about celebrating mistakes for their own sake. It's about understanding that they are inevitable on the path to learning, innovation, and deeper understanding. When we fear failure, we often stifle creativity. But when we embrace it, when we see it as feedback, we unlock incredible potential for problem solving and personal growth. It truly is the messy middle where the most profound learning happens.
It's a fundamental shift in perspective, but one that can have a profound impact on how our children approach challenges throughout their lives.
Absolutely. And it sets them up to be lifelong learners and adaptable problem solvers in a world that is constantly changing.
That's a fantastic takeaway. So, after embracing the power of mistakes and failure, what's next on our journey?
Next time, we'll explore the art of questioning. We'll move beyond the simple why to uncover the incredible power of what if.
Ooh, I can't wait. Join us next time for more on raising critical creative thinkers.
Welcome back. Today, we're mastering the art of questioning.
Last time, we explored the power of curiosity. Now we're moving beyond just asking why to embracing the transformative what if.
For sure, why questions are great for understanding existing things. They help us uncover the reasons behind something that already is. Think, why is the sky blue? It leads to explanations about light.
But what if is the engine of imagination. It's about exploring possibilities, inventing new scenarios, and thinking about things that aren't yet. It's about creating, not just analyzing.
Precisely. It opens up a vast world. Instead of, why does this happen? We ask, what if this didn't happen? Or what if something entirely different happened? This is where innovation and problem solving truly begin.
So, how do we help children shift from why curiosity to this expansive what if thinking?
It's all in the phrasing. We want to move from closed questions, which have one right answer, to open-ended questions that invite a range of responses and encourage elaboration. Why can sometimes get quick fact. What if demands more?
Can you give us an example?
Certainly. Imagine reading a story. Instead of asking, why did the character get lost? Which might have a direct answer. We could ask, what if the character had packed a map? How would the story be different?
Ah, I see. That immediately makes a child think about consequences, chain reactions, and alternative plot lines. They have to invent the different story themselves.
Exactly. Or consider a science concept. We might ask, why do plants need sunlight? For a factual answer. But then we pivot. What if plants didn't need sunlight? What else could they use as an energy source? This prompts imaginative thinking about entirely new life forms or energy systems.
This sounds like it's not just about asking questions, but about fostering a flexible mindset. It's about showing children that there isn't just one way for things to be.
That's a perfect way to put it, Lisa. We're teaching them to explore alternate realities and consider different perspectives. When we ask, what if there were no gravity? We're not just discussing a scientific impossibility. We're exploring how society, homes, travel, everything would have to change. It encourages empathy by asking, what if you were in that character's shoes?
So, the what if question becomes a prompt for empathy and perspective taking. It's like giving them mental tools for imagining different worlds.
And in doing so, we're nurturing critical thinking. When you ask, what if this plan fails? What's our backup? You're preparing them to anticipate challenges and not be derailed. It builds resilience and adaptability, which is key for any problem solver.
So, to recap, we're encouraging open ended questions that go beyond factual recall. We're prompting children to imagine hypothetical scenarios. And in doing so, we're building their capacity for creative thinking, problem solving, and empathy.
Precisely. We're teaching them to be architects of possibility. Another powerful way to use what if is to encourage them to question assumptions. For example, if a child says, I can't draw that, we can ask, what if you tried drawing it upside down? What if you used only circles? What if you pretended you were a robot drawing it? These prompts break down perceived barriers and open up new approaches.
That's brilliant for overcoming frustration. It reframes a perceived inability into an invitation to experiment. It's like giving them permission to play with the problem.
And that's exactly what we want. Playfulness is a vital component of creativity. When we encourage what-if scenarios, we create a safe space for exploration and for making mistakes. Mistakes are just unexpected outcomes in a what-if experiment.
I think a great way to remember this is to think of why as looking under the hood of what is, and what if as designing a completely new car. One is about understanding the existing mechanism, the other is about envisioning entirely new possibilities.
That's a fantastic analogy, Lisa. Understanding the existing mechanism helps us see what's possible, but designing a new car is where the real creative leap happens. We're not just asking kids to understand a world. We're inviting them to imagine how they could change it, improve it, or create something entirely novel within it.
So, by consistently posing these what if questions, we are actively training their brains to consider multiple solutions, to think about consequences, and to approach challenges with an inventive spirit. It's practically a superpower for future problem solvers.
It truly is. And it's something we can integrate into everyday conversations. Commenting on a movie, discussing a news event, or even looking at a cloud formation can be an opportunity to ask, what if? Children are naturally curious. Our role is to guide the curiosity toward these deeper, more expansive types of questions.
It sounds like the goal is to cultivate a habit of mind, a habit of considering alternatives, of exploring possibilities, and of not being afraid to ask those imaginative, what if questions that lead to new discoveries.
Exactly. We're building a generation of thinkers, innovators, and creators. By moving beyond the simple why and embracing the profound potential of what if, we equip them with the essential tools for navigating an ever-changing world.
So, to sum up what we've covered today, we've learned that while why questions help us understand what is, what if questions unlock imagination and creativity. By posing open-ended what if scenarios, we encourage children to think about possibilities, consider different perspectives, anticipate challenges, and reframe perceived limitations. This cultivates a flexible, inventive, and resilient mindset crucial for problem solving.
And that brings us to the end of episode 3. We've gone from understanding foundational curiosity through embracing mistakes, and now to mastering the art of questioning with what if. Next episode, Brainstorming Adventures, Unleashing Collective Creativity. Welcome back to Raised Problem Solvers. Today, we're diving into brainstorming and collective creativity.
Brainstorming adventures. I love it. It sounds so energetic. Last time, Alex, you got me thinking about how to prompt deeper thinking with questions, and I can see how that naturally leads into generating a whole flood of ideas. But for families, sometimes brainstorming can sound a bit formal or intimidating. How do we make it fun and accessible for kids?
That's a fantastic point, Lisa. The key is to reframe it. Instead of a rigid exercise, think of it as an idea party. It's about creating a space where wild, wonderful, and even seemingly silly ideas are not just welcomed, but celebrated. We want to encourage quantity over quality in the initial stages. It's like collecting puzzle pieces. You don't worry about fitting them together perfectly at first. You just want as many pieces as possible.
An idea party. That's a great way to put it. So, if we're aiming for quantity, what are some practical ways to get those initial ideas flowing? I'm picturing a family trying to come up with a fun weekend activity, for example.
Perfect example. Let's say the family wants to plan a weekend activity. First, we establish the goal clearly and simply. Let's come up with the most amazing, fun things we can do together this weekend. Then, we set the ground rules for the idea party. Rule number 1. All ideas are welcome. No idea is too small, too big, or too strange. We're suspending judgment.
Suspending judgment is crucial, isn't it? Because often kids have amazing ideas, but if they feel like they'll be shot down, they'll just clam up.
Exactly. And that leads to rule number 2. Encourage wild ideas. The crazier, the better. Sometimes those wild ideas can spark more practical, but still innovative solutions. Think about it. If you're trying to get to the moon, you wouldn't start just by thinking about the best car to get to the launch pad. You're thinking about rockets, space travel, the whole universe.
So, encourage the fantastical flights of fancy. What else?
Rule number 3, build on the ideas of others. This is where the collective part of collective creativity really shines. When one person shares an idea, others can jump in and say, oh, and we could also add, or what if we combine that with? It's like a game of creative telephone, but the message gets richer, not distorted.
That's the collaborative magic happening right there. It's not just one person's idea, it becomes a shared creation.
Precisely. And rule number 4, which is essential for keeping the energy high, go for quantity. We want as many ideas as possible. You can even set a timer. Say, okay, for the next 5 minutes, let's just shout out all the ideas we can think of for our weekend adventure. The goal isn't perfection, it's comprehensiveness. Aim to fill a page, a whiteboard, or even just a list on a piece of paper with as many suggestions as you can.
I can see how having a visible list would be motivating too. It's like a growing treasure trove of possibilities. So, we've got a goal, a positive atmosphere where all ideas are welcome, wild ideas are encouraged, we build on each other's thoughts, and we prioritize sheer volume. How do we actually facilitate this in a family setting?
There are so many fun, tangible ways. One I love is the idea jar. Before you even start the session, have everyone write down their ideas, one per slip of paper, and fold them up. Then, during your idea party, you pull slips from the jar. This can help shy participants contribute, as they can write their idea anonymously.
Ooh, an idea jar. That's brilliant. It removes some of the pressure of speaking up in front of everyone.
Another approach is using visual aids. A large piece of paper, a whiteboard, or even a roll of butcher paper can be great. As ideas come in, someone can quickly jot them down. You can even use different color markers to make it visually engaging. Sometimes, seeing the ideas laid out can spark new ones. It's like having a tangible map of the brainstorming journey.
So we're not just talking, we're seeing the ideas grow. What about when ideas start to feel a bit repetitive or we hit a bit of a lull?
That's a great sign that we might need a little creative nudge. You can introduce prompts. For our weekend activity example, we could ask questions like, what if our activity had to involve water? Or what if it had to be something we've never done before? Or what if it was inspired by a favorite book character? These kinds of specific prompts can unlock new avenues of thought.
Those are excellent ways to reignite the creative spark. It's like looking at the same landscape from a different angle. It's important to remember for listeners that at this stage, we're not evaluating any of these ideas. We're just gathering them. The evaluation comes later.
Absolutely. The evaluation phase is a completely separate step, and we'll get to that in future episodes. For now, the focus is on generating that initial wave of possibilities. Think of it as gathering all the ingredients before you start cooking. You need flour, sugar, eggs, chocolate chips. You don't start deciding which cookie recipe is best until you have all your ingredients laid out.
That's a perfect analogy. So, to recap the core principles of a successful brainstorming session with children, we aim for an energetic idea party atmosphere. We establish clear, simple goals. We create ground rules. All ideas are welcome, encourage wild and wacky thoughts, build on each other's contributions, and crucially, we prioritize sheer quantity of ideas. Tools like an idea jar or a shared visual space can really help facilitate this.
And remember, the goal is to foster a positive, non-judgmental environment where every contribution is valued. When children feel their ideas matter, they become more confident and more willing to participate in problem solving. It's about empowering them to see themselves as idea generators.
It's amazing how this process can transform a potentially mundane task, like planning an outing, into an exciting adventure filled with potential. And the skills they're building, active listening, creative thinking, collaboration, are so valuable.
Indeed, they're not just coming up with ideas for a weekend. They're practicing the very essence of innovation and problem solving. So, gather your family, grab some paper and pens, and get ready for your own brainstorming adventure.
Fantastic. So, Alex, what can we look forward to in our next episode?
Next time, we'll be putting on our detective hats as we explore the power of developing analytical skills.
Ooh, I can't wait for that. Join us next time for developing analytical skills.
See you then. Welcome back to Raise Problem Solvers, teaching critical creative thinking. Last time, we explored the exciting world of brainstorming and unleashing collective creativity. Now, we're shifting gears to focus on the crucial critical aspect of thinking. Today, we're diving into the detective's toolkit, developing analytical skills.
That sounds important, Alex. We've been all about sparking ideas, but how do we help our kids actually understand and dissect those ideas or any problem that comes their way? And how do we do it in a way that feels like fun, not homework?
Exactly, Lisa. It's about equipping our children with the mental tools that detectives use, the ability to observe closely, gather clues, and piece together information to reach a logical conclusion. This is the art of analytical thinking. Think about it. Even the most creative idea needs to be examined. Is it feasible? Does it make sense? Does it solve the right problem?
So it's about moving beyond just having an idea to understanding how that idea works and why it's a good idea.
Precisely. And the first tool in our detective's toolkit is observation. It sounds simple, but truly observing is a skill. We ask children to look at things, but do we ask them to look for things or to notice details?
That's a great point. I often ask my daughter what she saw at the park, and she'll say the slide or the swings. But if I ask her to describe the shape of the clouds or how many red cars drove by, that's a different kind of observation.
You've hit on it perfectly. We can encourage observation through simple games. Try this. Have your child describe an object without naming it, and you have to guess what it is. Or vice versa. This forces them to focus on specific characteristics. What color is it? What texture does it have? What shape is it? This isn't just about naming. It's about noticing the details.
I can see how that would make them more mindful of what's around them. What's the next tool?
The next critical tool is pattern recognition. Our brains are naturally wired to find patterns. Think about how children learn language. They hear patterns and start to predict what comes next. We can harness this for problem solving.
Patterns in what sense? Like in a sequence of numbers?
That's one example, but it can be much broader. It could be recognizing a sequence of events, identifying how things are similar or different, or even spotting a recurring theme in a story. For example, you can play a game where you make a series of sounds, clap, stomp, snap, and ask your child to predict the next sound in the pattern. Or lay out different toys and ask them to group them by color, shape, or size. What do these three have in common?
So, it's about spotting connections and regularities. That's really helpful. It makes them think about the underlying structure of things.
Exactly. And building on that, we have information gathering and evaluation. Detectives don't just see one clue and run with it. They gather all the available evidence, and then they have to decide which evidence is most important or reliable.
This sounds like the critical part we talked about. How do we teach kids to sift through information?
We can start with everyday scenarios. If your child wants a new toy, instead of just saying yes or no, ask questions like, what do you know about this toy? Where did you see it? What do others say about it? Is it something you really need or just something you want right now? This encourages them to gather information and then consider its value.
So, moving from a simple desire to a more reasoned decision. That's a big step. For older kids, this could involve looking at different news sources or comparing product reviews, couldn't it?
Absolutely. It's about teaching them to ask, who is telling me this? Why are they telling me this? Is there another side to the story? This isn't about cynicism. It's about healthy skepticism and informed judgment. We want them to be discerning consumers of information.
It's like teaching them to be their own fact checkers.
Precisely. And all of these skills, observation, pattern recognition, and information evaluation, lead to our final key detective skill for today, logical reasoning. This is about connecting the dots. If A is true, and it leads to B, then B is likely true.
This is where it all comes together, isn't it?
It is. And we can teach logical reasoning through simple if-then scenarios. If it's raining outside, then what should you do before you go out? Answer: take an umbrella or wear a jacket. Or, if you don't finish your homework, then what might happen at school? These are basic cause and effect statements.
These are such practical examples. It feels much more accessible than I imagined. It's not about complex equations, but about thinking through consequences and connections.
And that's the beauty of it. We can even turn problem solving into a game. Imagine a treasure hunt where each clue requires a bit of observation, pattern recognition, and logical deduction to find the next one. Who left the clue? What does it mean? Where would someone hide the next one based on this information?
My kids would love that. It turns thinking into an adventure. So, to recap for our listeners, we're building our children's analytical skills by focusing on 4 key detective tools. First, observation. Encourage them to notice specific details. Second, pattern recognition. Help them find similarities, differences, and sequences. Third, information gathering and evaluation. Teach them to question sources and assess the importance of information. And fourth, logical reasoning. Guide them to understand cause and effect and connect ideas.
That's a perfect summary. Lisa, remember, these aren't abstract academic concepts. They are practical skills that children use and can develop every single day. By making these detective activities a part of their play and their daily interactions, we're helping them build a robust toolkit for understanding the world and solving problems, both big and small. It's about fostering that inquisitive, analytical mind that can question, explore, and ultimately understand.
It really makes their creative ideas more powerful when they have these analytical skills to back them up. I'm excited to try these out.
Me too. And that brings us to the end of episode 5. Next episode, Puzzle Power, selecting engaging challenges. Welcome back. Last time, we equipped ourselves with the Detective's Toolkit, focusing on developing analytical skills. Now, let's dive into the engaging world of puzzles and games.
That's right, Alex. Because when we think about problem solving, it's not just about tackling big, complex issues. It's also about the day-to-day practice of thinking logically, persevering, and staying curious. And what better way to do that than with puzzles? I think of them as mini challenges that train our brains.
Exactly. Puzzles are fantastic because they offer immediate feedback. You either solve it or you don't. This creates a clear goal and a satisfying reward when you reach it. Plus, we can select puzzles that perfectly match a child's developmental stage and interests. This is crucial for keeping them engaged.
So, the first step is really about selection, right? How do we choose the right puzzle? It shouldn't be so easy that it's boring, but not so hard that it leads to frustration. Think of it like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. We're looking for the puzzle that's just right.
Precisely. When selecting puzzles, consider a few key factors. First, age appropriateness. A puzzle designed for a 4-year-old will likely be too simple for a 10-year-old, and vice versa. The difficulty should be challenging but achievable. This means the child should be able to solve it with some effort, not without any.
And how do we gauge that? What are some signs that a puzzle might be too hard or too easy?
A puzzle that's too easy often results in quick completion with little thought, and sometimes even boredom. The child might finish it and immediately ask, "What's next?" On the flip side, if a puzzle is too hard, you'll see signs of frustration, giving up quickly, tantrums, or a complete lack of engagement. They might just stare at it or push it away.
Okay, so we want that sweet spot where there's a bit of a struggle, but it feels manageable. What's the next factor in choosing a puzzle?
The second factor is interest. What sparks a child's curiosity? Are they fascinated by animals, vehicles, fairy tales, or perhaps building and construction? Choosing puzzles that align with their passions will naturally make them more invested. A child who loves dinosaurs will probably be more excited about a dinosaur jigsaw puzzle than one of abstract shapes.
That makes so much sense. If it's something they already find intriguing, they'll be more motivated to put in the effort. So, age appropriateness and interest. What else?
The third factor is the type of thinking it promotes. Remember our last episode on analytical skills? Puzzles can be fantastic for developing specific cognitive abilities. We have puzzles that focus on asterisk spatial reasoning. These help children understand how objects fit together in space. Asterisk logical deduction. These require children to follow a series of steps or find patterns. Asterisk pattern recognition. Identifying sequences and relationships. Asterisk problem-solving strategies. Learning different approaches to a single challenge.
Oh, that's a great way to break it down. So, we can intentionally pick puzzles to target different skills. Can you give us some examples of different puzzle types and what skills they excel at?
Absolutely. Let's start with a classic, jigsaw puzzles. For spatial reasoning, they're unbeatable. Assembling a jigsaw puzzle requires children to visualize how pieces fit together, to understand shapes, and to see how a whole picture is made up of many small parts. The number of pieces should, of course, be age appropriate. A toddler might start with a simple 4-piece wooden puzzle.
I've seen how absorbed kids can get in jigsaw puzzles. They're really focused on fitting each piece. What about puzzles that are more about thinking through steps?
For logical deduction and planning, maze puzzles are excellent. Navigating a maze requires foresight. You have to think, if I go this way, what happens? It encourages thinking ahead, considering consequences, and backtracking when a path doesn't work. This is a direct application of logical flow.
So, it's not just about knowing the answer, but about the process of finding it. What else falls into that category of logical thinking?
Think about logic grid puzzles or Sudoku for older children. These require them to read clues, make deductions, and systematically eliminate possibilities. For example, in a logic grid, you might have clues like Sarah's favorite color is not blue, and the person wearing red has the dog. Children have to cross-reference information to figure out who owns which pet and likes which color. These are superb for developing analytical skills we discussed last time.
That sounds like it really gets the brain working. Are there puzzles that are good for developing a more creative approach to problem solving?
Definitely. Tangrams are a wonderful example. They're a set of geometric shapes that can be rearranged to form different figures. This is brilliant for spatial reasoning, but also for creative thinking because there are often multiple ways to create the same silhouette. It encourages children to see familiar shapes in new ways.
Tangrams are fascinating. I remember playing with those. You see a square, but you can also make a cat, a boat, so many things. What about games that involve building?
Construction toys like Lego bricks or similar building blocks are incredibly valuable. They foster spatial reasoning, of course, but also planning, design thinking, and of course, problem solving. A child might have an idea for a spaceship, but then they encounter a problem. They don't have the right size brick, or their initial design is unstable. They then have to figure out a solution, adapting their plan. This is prototyping in action.
That's a perfect connection to our future episodes on action and prototyping. So, we have jigsaws for spatial reasoning, mazes for logic and planning, logic grids for deduction, tangrams for creativity and spatial skills, and building toys for design and problem solving. That's a great range of options.
And we shouldn't forget simple word puzzles like crosswords or word searches for older kids. These improve vocabulary, spelling, and pattern recognition within language. There are also digital puzzles and apps, which can be very engaging, but it's always good to balance those with physical, hands-on puzzles.
It sounds like the key is variety and intentionality. We're not just picking up any puzzle, we're thinking about what skills we want to nurture. So, to recap what we've discussed today. First, when selecting puzzles, consider age appropriateness to ensure the challenge is just right, not too easy, not too hard. Second, tap into child's interests to maximize engagement and motivation. And third, think about the type of cognitive skills the puzzle promotes, like spatial reasoning, logical deduction, or creative thinking. We looked at examples like jigsaw puzzles for spatial skills, mazes for logic and planning, logic grids for deduction, tangrams for creativity, and building toys for design.
And remember, the goal isn't just to solve the puzzle, but to foster the underlying thinking processes. It's about encouraging persistence, the willingness to try different approaches, and the satisfaction of overcoming a challenge. These are the building blocks of strong problem solvers.
Absolutely. These playful activities are a fantastic, low-stakes way to build confidence and resilience.
Next time, we'll explore the fascinating world of storytelling and how it can be a superpower for building narrative and logic. Next episode, Storytelling as a Superpower, Building Narrative and Logic. Welcome back. Last time we covered brainstorming. Now, let's tackle storytelling.
That's right, Alex. And we're going to do it through something pretty magical, storytelling. It might sound a little less technical than brainstorming, but as we'll explore, Crafting a good story is an incredible workout for both creative and critical thinking muscles.
Absolutely, Lisa. Think about it. When a child, or even an adult, tells a story, they're doing so much more than just making things up. They're building worlds, creating characters, and most importantly, they're connecting events in a logical sequence.
So, it's not just about a fun adventure. It's about how that adventure unfolds, right? The cause and effect.
Precisely. And this is where the superpower of storytelling really comes into play for problem solving. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's recap where we are. We've ignited curiosity, learned from mistakes, mastered asking the right questions, and unleashed creative brainstorming. Now, we're taking that creative energy and channeling it into building narratives, which inherently involves logic and structure.
Which is a fantastic segue. So, Alex, how does storytelling actually help build our problem solving skills?
Great question. Let's break it down. When we tell a story, we're essentially creating a miniature problem and then guiding our listener or ourselves through its resolution. Imagine a character wants something. That's the goal. But there's an obstacle in their way. That's the problem.
I see. So, the character has to think about how to overcome that obstacle. They can't just magically get it.
Exactly. And that's where the critical thinking comes in. They might try one thing and it doesn't work. What do they do then? They have to analyze why it didn't work and try something else. This iterative process of trial, error, and adjustment is the very heart of problem solving.
It's like a mini experiment within the story. And I bet children, especially, are naturals at this when they're just playing and making up stories.
They are, and we can nurture that naturally. One of the most fundamental elements of storytelling is plot. A plot isn't just a random string of events. It's a sequence where one event leads logically to the next. We can encourage this by asking guiding questions.
Like what?
Start with character. Who is our story about? What do they want more than anything? Then, introduce a complication. What stops them from getting it? This want and obstacle dynamic is the engine of most stories.
So, you want to establish the initial state, the desire, and then the conflict.
Exactly. And then, you prompt them to think about the steps the character takes. So, if the dragon is guarding the treasure, what might the brave knight do? Will they fight it head on? Try to sneak past? Ask for help? Each of these is a potential solution to the problem presented.
And the child has to decide which one makes the most sense for their story, or see what happens when one doesn't work.
Precisely. This teaches them to consider consequences. If the knight tries to sneak past and the dragon snorts fire, what happens to the knight? This foresight, this thinking ahead about potential outcomes, is a vital problem-solving skill. It's about understanding that actions have reactions.
It sounds like we're also building narrative logic. The story has to make sense, even if it's fantastical.
You've hit on a key point, Lisa. Narrative logic provides a framework for critical thinking. When a story feels disjointed or illogical, it's hard for us to follow and appreciate. The same is true for problem solving. Solutions need to be grounded in some form of logic, even if the problem itself is unexpected.
So, by encouraging clear plot development, we're reinforcing structured thinking.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be complex. For younger children, a simple sequence like, first, the bear needed honey. Then, he had to climb a tall tree. But the bees were angry, so he had to be very quiet. This chain of events shows a clear beginning, middle, and a challenge in the middle that requires a specific action.
And what about characters? You mentioned characters earlier. How does developing characters aid our thinking?
Characters are where we can explore empathy and perspective. When children create characters with different motivations, needs, and personalities, they're stepping outside their own viewpoints. They have to think, what would this character do? Or how would that character feel?
That's a huge part of understanding problems, isn't it? Seeing them from different angles.
Immensely. Imagine a story where two characters have a disagreement. To resolve this, the storyteller has to understand both characters' perspectives. What is each character's goal? What are they afraid of? By imagining these internal states, children develop a deeper form of empathy and more nuanced problem solving. They learn that conflicts often arise from differing needs or misunderstandings.
So it's not just about what happens, but why it happens and how different people involved might see it.
Exactly. And to make these characters believable, the storyteller needs to give them consistent traits and motivations. If a character is described as incredibly brave, they shouldn't suddenly become a coward without a very good reason explained in the story. This concept of consistency and motivation is crucial for understanding how people, and therefore characters, behave. It's about logical character development.
That ties back to the narrative logic we discussed. Everything needs to fit together.
It does. And this leads us to another powerful aspect of storytelling: building suspense and resolution. Good stories often build tension. The problem gets a little worse, the stakes get higher. This teaches us to anticipate challenges and understand how situations can escalate.
And then, the satisfying moment when the problem is solved.
The resolution. This is where the critical thinking comes full circle. Was the solution clever? Did it make sense given the character and the situation? Was it earned? By thinking about the effectiveness of the resolution, children are evaluating the overall problem-solving process that occurred within the story. They're learning to assess not just if a problem was solved, but how well it was solved.
It feels like we're always coming back to that core idea. There's a problem, and there's a process to solve it.
And storytelling is one of the most engaging ways to practice that process. It makes abstract thinking tangible. Instead of just talking about cause and effect, we see the knight's action of drawing his sword leading to the dragon's roar. Instead of just discussing empathy, we feel the younger sibling's sadness when they're left out of the game.
So, to recap for our listeners, storytelling is a superpower for problem solving because it inherently involves building a logical sequence of events. We can encourage this by focusing on character goals and obstacles, prompting consideration of consequences, developing empathetic characters with consistent motivations, and evaluating the how and why of the story's resolution.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. We're taking that raw, creative energy from brainstorming and weaving it into coherent, logical narratives. This process not only makes for captivating stories, but also hones essential critical thinking and problem-solving skills.
It's a beautiful synergy between creativity and logic. And for parents and educators, it's a fantastic, low-pressure way to nurture these skills in children, just by encouraging them to tell stories.
Absolutely. And the more they practice creating these narrative arcs, the setup, the challenge, the attempts at solutions, and the resolution, the more naturally they will approach real-world problems. They'll start to see patterns, anticipate obstacles, and think creatively about overcoming them.
It's like building a mental muscle for problem solving one story at a time.
In our next episode, we'll explore a concept central to solving complex problems: empathy and understanding the needs of others, diving into the world of design thinking.
Ooh, design thinking. That sounds fascinating.
It is. So join us next time as we continue our journey on Ray's Problem Solvers. Welcome back. Last time, we explored the detective's toolkit for developing sharp analytical skills.
And we learned how to choose the right kind of puzzles to really get those young minds working. It was all about building that foundation of logical thought.
Exactly, Lisa. Now, building on that foundation, we're diving into a whole new way of approaching challenges: design thinking. And at its heart, the most crucial element of design thinking is empathy.
Empathy. That's such an important word, especially for kids. It means understanding how someone else feels, right?
Precisely. And when we're thinking about solving problems, especially for other people, we need to start by truly understanding their needs and their perspective. Think of it like stepping into someone else's shoes. If you're trying to design a better toy, you wouldn't just guess what kids might like. You want to observe them, talk to them, and really understand what makes them excited, what frustrates them, and what they imagine.
So, instead of us adults deciding what's best, we're teaching children to figure out what the actual users of a solution need.
That's the core of it. Design thinking is a process, and the first phase is often called empathize. It's about gathering insights. How we do this with kids. We encourage observation. Have them watch people in different situations. If they're designing something for younger siblings, have them watch their siblings play. What do they struggle with? What brings them joy? What do they wish they had?
That sounds like a great way to make learning about feelings into an active problem-solving skill. It's not just about saying, I feel sad, but why might someone else feel sad, and what could help them?
Exactly. And then we move to the define phase. This is where we take all those observations and insights and clearly articulate the problem. It's not just kids are bored. It becomes something more specific, like younger children often struggle to find engaging activities during long car rides that don't involve screens. See the difference?
Oh, I do. That second one is so much more actionable. Kids are bored is too vague to even start solving. But engaging activities for car rides that don't involve screens gives us a clear target.
Right. We're defining the real problem from the perspective of the person experiencing it. And here's a neat connection back to something we discussed earlier in the series. Remember our episode on analytical skills? This phase is where those skills really shine. We're analyzing the data we've gathered through empathy to pinpoint the core issue.
So, after we've empathized and defined, what comes next? This is the part where the creative juices really start flowing, I imagine.
It absolutely is. That's the ideate phase. And this is where we encourage brainstorming. No idea is too silly, too wild, or too unusual at this stage. The goal is quantity and diversity of ideas. We want children to generate as many potential solutions as possible to the problem they've defined.
This sounds like the fun part. I can picture kids just throwing out ideas like confetti.
It can be, and it's important to create a safe space for that. Ask open-ended questions. What if we could? How might we? Encourage them to build on each other's ideas. Think of it like a collaborative building project. One child suggests a tower, another suggests a bridge, and suddenly they're building a whole city.
It's like that brainstorming episode, but now with a specific problem to solve. We're not just generating ideas in a vacuum. We're generating ideas for something.
Precisely. And we're using the empathy and definition phases to make sure our ideas are relevant. So, we've empathized, we've defined the problem, and now we're ideating. We're generating lots of potential solutions. What do you think a child's natural inclination might be after coming up with a bunch of ideas?
They'd probably want to pick their favorite one and just run with it.
And that's a natural impulse. But in design thinking, we introduce the prototype phase next. This is where we move from ideas on paper to something tangible, even if it's very simple. A prototype is a basic version of a solution that can be tested. It doesn't have to be perfect or even functional in the way the final product would be.
Like making a simple drawing of a new toy or a pretend model of a better way to organize a bookshelf.
Exactly. For the car ride problem we talked about earlier, a prototype could be a simple drawing of a new type of travel game, or maybe a rough sketch of how a new seat organizer might work. The key is to make the idea real enough to get feedback.
So, it's like building a rough draft of a solution.
A perfect analogy, Lisa, it's a rough draft. And this leads us directly into the final phase, test. Once we have a prototype, we test it. We get it in front of the people we're trying to help, those younger children on the car ride, for example, and we observe their reaction. Does it solve their problem? Do they understand it? What works and what doesn't?
This is where they see if their empathetic understanding was accurate and if their creative ideas actually work in practice.
Yes. And the testing phase is crucial because it almost always leads back to the beginning. When we test, we get more feedback, more insights. We realize our initial definitions might have been incomplete or our solutions need tweaking. That's the beauty of design thinking. It's iterative. It's a cycle. You learn, you adapt, you improve.
So, if the tests reveal that the toy isn't as engaging as they thought, they go back and empathize more, or redefine the problem, or brainstorm new ideas.
Exactly. They might discover the problem wasn't boredom, but a misunderstanding of how kids play with certain toys. Or they might realize their fantastic idea for a car game is too complicated for the age group. This iterative nature is what makes design thinking so powerful for real-world problem solving, because real-world problems are rarely solved in one go.
It really closes the loop. You start by understanding people, you define the problem from their viewpoint, you brainstorm solutions, create a basic version to test, and then you use the results of that test to refine everything. It's a complete journey from understanding needs to creating effective solutions.
And it's a journey that children can start taking right now. It teaches them valuable skills: observation, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and most importantly, compassion through empathy. These are skills that will serve them well in every aspect of their lives, not just in solving puzzles or acing tests, but in building relationships and contributing to the world around them.
It's about empowering them to see a problem, understand the human impact, and then actively work towards creating a better situation. That's why I love how we've connected empathy directly to problem solving. They're not separate things at all, they're intrinsically linked.
They truly are. And we've covered a lot of ground today, from the initial spark of curiosity to the analytical skills, creative brainstorming, and now the empathetic design thinking process.
So, to recap what Alex has walked us through on the design thinker's journey, it starts with empathy, stepping into someone else's shoes. Then, define, clearly stating the problem from that person's perspective. Next is ideate, brainstorming as many solutions as possible. This is followed by prototype, creating a simple, tangible version of a solution. And finally, test, trying out the prototype to gather feedback and learn, which often leads us back to the beginning to refine our ideas. It's a continuous cycle of understanding, creating, and improving.
You've got it, Lisa. And next time, we'll build on this by exploring collaborative challenges. How can children work together even more effectively to tackle problems? Next episode, collaborative challenges, working together to solve. Welcome back. Last time, we explored the incredible power of empathy and user-centered thinking.
Today, we're diving into something equally crucial for tackling complex problems: collaboration.
True collaboration is about synergy, where the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Think of it like an orchestra. Each musician plays their instrument beautifully, but it's when they play together, listening to each other, that they create something truly magnificent. Similarly, when children collaborate effectively, they can achieve solutions that no single individual could on their own.
That's a great analogy, Alex. So, how do we actively foster this collaborative spirit? It can be tricky, especially with children who might have very different ideas or personalities.
One key is to emphasize leveraging each other's strengths. Remember how we talked about brainstorming? Collaboration builds on those ideas. When a group works together, each child brings a unique perspective, a different skill set, or a particular way of thinking. Your job as a parent or educator is to help them see and appreciate these differences.
So, instead of seeing a strong reader and a strong artist as two separate individuals, you encourage them to recognize how the reader's ability to find information can support the artist's visual representation of an idea.
Precisely. You can often structure activities to make these strengths shine. For instance, for a project requiring research and then a presentation, you might have one child who loves digging for facts take the lead on research, while another child who excels at drawing or building can focus on the visual aspects of the presentation. This isn't about dividing tasks equally, but about assigning tasks where each child can contribute their best.
That sounds like it can really boost their confidence too. When you're good at something and get to use that skill to help the group, it feels great.
Absolutely. And beyond individual strengths, effective communication is the bedrock of collaboration. Children need to learn not just how to speak their ideas, but how to listen actively and respectfully to others. This means encouraging them to pause, truly hear what their teammate is saying, and ask clarifying questions before jumping in with their own thoughts.
Active listening, that's such a vital skill, not just for problem solving, but for life in general. How can we encourage better listening?
We can model it ourselves, of course, but in group activities, you can introduce simple rules. For example, setting a talking stick or a designated time for each person to share without interruption. You can also ask them to repeat back what they heard someone else say before offering their own idea. This ensures understanding and validates the speaker's contribution.
I like the idea of asking them to repeat back. It checks for comprehension and shows they were really paying attention. What about when disagreements inevitably arise? That seems like a major hurdle for collaboration.
That's where compromise comes in. Children need to understand that not every idea will be the one chosen, and that's okay. They learn to negotiate, to find a middle ground, or to combine elements from different suggestions. This is a critical part of collaborative problem solving. It's not about winning an argument. It's about finding the best solution for the group.
So, it's about teaching them that sometimes they might have to concede a point to move forward as a team. This can be tough for children who are used to getting their way.
It certainly can be, but the rewards are immense. When they successfully navigate a disagreement and come up with a stronger, collectively developed solution, they learn a powerful lesson about teamwork. We can frame these moments not as failures, but as opportunities to practice negotiation and find creative syntheses.
Let's talk about some practical, engaging activities. What sorts of things can we do with children to encourage this collaborative problem solving?
Building challenges are fantastic for this. Think group Lego builds, constructing a bridge out of popsicle sticks and glue, or even designing a fort. These activities inherently require shared planning, resource management, and division of labor. For example, building a large Lego castle involves deciding who will build the towers, who will design the walls, and who will add decorative elements.
And they'll naturally have to communicate about how those sections will connect. Hey, can you make your tower a bit shorter so my wall can reach it?
Exactly. Another great avenue is collaborative storytelling or creating a group piece of art. Everyone contributes a sentence or a brushstroke, building on what came before. This reinforces the idea of shared creation and creative continuity. We touched on storytelling earlier, and collaborative storytelling is a natural extension of that.
I see how that ties back nicely. You're not just creating, you're building on each other's narrative threads or artistic visions. Are there any specific challenges you'd recommend that are particularly good for fostering compromise?
Escape room-style challenges, even simplified versions at home, are excellent. You can create a series of puzzles that require different skills to solve, and often, the final solution needs to be pieced together from clues found by different team members. This forces them to communicate their findings and integrate them. For instance, one child might find a sequence of numbers, another a word clue, and they need to combine these to unlock the next step.
That sounds incredibly fun. And it really pushes them to synthesize information from various sources that were gathered collaboratively.
It does. And importantly, these activities should be framed not with a win or lose mentality, but with an emphasis on the process of working together and a shared learning experience. The goal is to build their collaborative muscles, so they are better equipped to tackle even bigger, more complex challenges down the line. We are building a toolbox, and collaboration is a critical tool we're adding today.
So, to recap, building strong collaborative problem-solving skills in children involves encouraging them to recognize and leverage each other's strengths, fostering active listening and respectful communication, teaching the art of compromise, and providing opportunities for shared creation and problem-solving through engaging activities.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. By nurturing these skills, we're We're not just helping them become better problem solvers. We're helping them become better team players, better communicators, and more well-rounded individuals prepared for a world that increasingly relies on collective intelligence.
It really emphasizes that thinking isn't always a solitary act. Some of the most brilliant solutions come from diverse minds working in harmony.
Absolutely. And this brings us to the end of episode 9. Next time, we'll move from collaborative development to putting those ideas into action. Next episode, from ideas to action, prototyping and experimentation. Welcome back to Raise Problem Solvers. Today, we're moving from ideas to action.
That's right, Alex. It's one thing to have a brilliant idea, but it's a whole other ballgame to actually build it and see if it works. This episode is all about taking those sparks of creativity and turning them into something tangible, something we can touch, test, and learn from. Think of it as giving those fantastic ideas a chance to step out onto the stage.
Exactly. And for kids, this stage can be as simple as a few Lego bricks, some cardboard, or even just a drawing. The key here is to encourage them to move beyond just thinking about a solution to actively doing something with it. Prototyping is essentially making a first, rough version of your idea to see how it holds up. It's a physical manifestation of a concept.
So, it's not about creating a perfect, finished product right away. It's about making something that lets you test your core idea. Like if a child has an idea for a new type of toy car, their prototype might not have fancy paint or intricate details. It could just be 3 blocks taped together with wheels made from bottle caps, strong enough to roll.
Precisely. And the goal of this first version, this prototype, isn't to be flawless. It's to help us learn. We want to discover what's working with our idea and, perhaps more importantly, what isn't. This ties back perfectly to our earlier episode on embracing mistakes. Prototyping is a judgment-free zone for learning.
I love that, a judgment-free zone for learning. Because often the first attempt at anything novel, especially for younger minds, is going to have some interesting results. What do you mean by experimentation in this context?
Experimentation is the active process of using that prototype to explore possibilities and gather information. It's about asking questions like, what happens if I push this? Does it do what I thought it would? Or how can I make it stronger slash faster slash more interesting? It's a series of playful tests. Imagine a young inventor with their Lego car. They might try driving it down a ramp to see how fast it goes. Then they might add more weight to see if it still rolls. They're experimenting with variables.
So, the prototype is the object they built, and the experimentation is what they do with it. It's the testing phase.
That's a great way to put it, Lisa. And the beauty of this process is that it's iterative. That means we do it, we learn, we improve, and we do it again. It's a cycle. You build a prototype, you test it, you observe what happened, you think about what you learned, and then you adjust your prototype or even your original idea based on those learnings.
This sounds like it could get frustrating if things don't work, though. For kids, that initial excitement might fade if their creation falls apart immediately. How do we keep that positive momentum going?
That's where framing is so important. We need to teach them, and ourselves, that failure in prototyping isn't failure in the project. It's data. Think of scientists in a lab. They don't get discouraged if an experiment doesn't yield the expected result. They reevaluate. They tweak. They try again. We can encourage kids by celebrating the discovery, not just the success.
So, instead of saying, oh, it broke, we might say, wow, that's interesting. Why do you think it broke there? Or, what did you learn from that when you pushed it harder? Focusing on the why and the what next.
Exactly. And we can start with very simple prototyping activities. For a younger child, a prototype could be drawing a blueprint for their dream tree house and then building a small-scale model out of cardboard boxes. For an older child, It might be coding a basic version of a game idea or building a simple circuit for a new gadget. The complexity of the prototype should match the child's age and skill level.
And the materials don't have to be expensive or fancy. Recycle materials are fantastic for this. Old boxes, paper towel tubes, plastic containers, fabric scraps, they're perfect for building quick, inexpensive prototypes. It also adds another layer of creative problem solving. How can we use what we have to make this work?
Absolutely. It fosters a resourcefulness that's incredibly valuable. Now, when it comes to experimentation, the key is to encourage curiosity. We can prompt them with open-ended questions. Instead of saying, test if it rolls down the hill, we might ask, what do you want to find out about your car? This empowers them to set their own tests based on what they're curious about.
That makes sense. It shifts the ownership of the process to the child. They become the lead scientist of their own invention. And when they encounter a problem during testing, that's not a dead end. It's an invitation to problem solve further.
It is. It's an opportunity to engage those critical thinking skills we've been fostering. Okay, the wheel keeps falling off. What are some ways we could attach it more securely? What if we used a different material for the axle? What if we made the whole attachment point stronger? These are the types of questions that lead to deeper understanding.
And remember, this iterative cycle of build, test, learn, improve is the very essence of innovation. It's how we get to those amazing solutions we see all around us. Whether it's a new app, a better car, or even a more efficient way to organize a classroom.
Think about the process of creating a new piece of software. Developers don't write the entire program perfectly in one go. They build small pieces, test them, refine them, and then integrate them. Prototyping and experimentation are universal principles that apply to almost any field of endeavor.
So, to recap for our listeners, prototyping is about making a first version of an idea to learn from it. Experimentation is the act of testing that prototype to discover what works and what doesn't. And the entire process is iterative, meaning we repeat it, learning and improving as we go. The key is to embrace every outcome, even the unexpected ones, as valuable data.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. By encouraging our children to prototype and experiment, we're not just teaching them to build things. We're teaching them resilience, adaptability, resourcefulness, and the boundless joy of bringing their ideas into the world. We're empowering them to be creators and innovators.
It's about fostering that maker mindset, isn't it? That can-do attitude that says, I have an idea, and I can figure out how to make it real.
Absolutely. So let's go out there and encourage some building, some testing, and some fantastic learning.
Next episode, we'll be diving into the digital realm and exploring how to think critically online.
Welcome back. Last time, we explored prototyping, turning ideas into tangible experiments. Now let's focus on navigating the digital playground and thinking critically online.
That's such an important topic, Alex. Our kids are growing up surrounded by screens, and the internet is a vast ocean of information. How do we help them find the good stuff and avoid the dangerous currents?
Exactly, Lisa. We need to equip them with a digital detective's toolkit, building on what we discussed earlier. Remember gathering clues and looking for evidence? That's even more vital when online clues can be easily manipulated.
So, it's about teaching them to be skeptical but not cynical, to question what they see and read.
Precisely. Let's start with the foundation. Not everything online is true. It's like a bustling marketplace. There are genuine vendors and there are con artists. Our first step is teaching them to recognize the difference. We can start with simple questions. Who made this? Why did they make it? Is it trying to sell me something or convince me of something?
Those are great starting points. It's about looking beyond the shiny surface of a website or a social media post. What are some specific strategies for evaluating sources, especially when children are consuming information for school projects or just for fun?
One of the most effective methods is cross-referencing. If they find information on one site, encourage them to look for it on at least 2 or 3 other reputable sources. Are other established news organizations or educational institutions saying the same thing? If only one obscure blog mentions a miracle cure, it's probably not to be trusted.
That makes sense. It's like a scientist checking their results against multiple trials. And what about identifying misinformation, like fake news or misleading statistics? That can be so hard to spot.
It can be, and it's constantly evolving. A good starting point is to look at the source again. Is it a well-known news organization with a history of journalistic integrity? Or is it a site with a name that sounds sensational or biased? We should also teach them to look for emotional language. Misinformation often relies on provoking strong emotions like anger or fear to spread quickly.
Ah, so if something makes them feel really outraged, that's a red flag to investigate further, rather than just sharing it.
Exactly. Another crucial aspect is understanding the intent behind the content. Is it meant to inform, to entertain, or to persuade? If it's trying to persuade, they need to ask themselves, what are they trying to persuade me to believe or do? This is about discerning the digital messenger.
And what about visual information? Photos and videos can be incredibly powerful, but they can also be easily doctored or taken out of context.
That's a very keen observation. Tools exist to manipulate images and videos, making them appear real. Teaching children to be wary of images that seem too perfect, too dramatic, or that provoke an extreme emotional response is key. Sometimes, even a reverse image search can help reveal if an image has been used before in a different context. Again, it's that detective work, digging a little deeper.
So, we're equipping them with a healthy dose of skepticism and the tools to verify information. What about the digital playground aspect? Social media, online games, forums, these are places where critical thinking is constantly being tested.
Indeed, on social media, for example, it's easy to get caught up in viral trends or peer pressure. We need to help children understand that likes, shares, and follower counts don't necessarily equate to truth or validity. Just because something is popular doesn't make it true. We can use an analogy. A playground can be fun, but you still need to be aware of who you're playing with and the rules of the game.
And in online games, there are often in-game purchases or pressure to spend real money. That's another area where critical thinking comes into play, evaluating what's a good value versus a scam.
Absolutely. It's about teaching them to make informed decisions, whether it's about the information they consume or the actions they take online. This also extends to their own digital footprint. What they post, share, and say online can have long-term consequences. We need to encourage them to think before they click, before they post, and before they share.
So, when we talk about navigating the digital playground, it's really about responsible digital citizenship. What does that look like in practice for parents?
It starts with open communication. Create an environment where your children feel comfortable talking to you about what they see and experience online, without fear of being immediately punished or having their devices taken away. Ask them what they're seeing, what they're learning, and what's interesting them.
That's crucial. If they're scared to talk about it, they'll just hide it, and then you'll have no idea what they're exposed to. So, you mentioned being skeptical, but not cynical. How do we strike that balance? We don't want to raise kids who distrust everything and everyone on the internet.
That's a great point, Lisa. The key is to foster a curious and investigative mindset rather than a dismissive one. Instead of saying, that's probably fake, we can encourage them to say, that's an interesting claim. Let's see if we can find out more about it. It's about empowering them with the ability to verify, not just to reject. We're teaching them to be explorers, not just critics.
So, it's about fostering that natural curiosity we talked about and applying it to the online world. We want them to ask, how do I know this is true, rather than just assuming it is or assuming it isn't.
Precisely. And this is an ongoing conversation. The digital landscape is always changing. What's relevant today might be different tomorrow. So, fostering these critical thinking skills is not a one-time lesson, but a continuous journey.
It sounds like we're giving them the tools to be discerning consumers and creators of digital content. It's about building resilience against misinformation and teaching them to engage with the online world in a way that's both safe and productive.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. We've talked about questioning sources, cross-referencing information, recognizing emotional manipulation, understanding intent, being cautious with visuals, navigating social media responsibly, and most importantly, fostering open communication and a mindset of curious investigation. These are all essential skills for thriving in our modern, interconnected world.
It really boils down to empowering them to think for themselves, even when they're surrounded by so much outside influence. Thanks, Alex. This is such vital information for parents.
My pleasure. Next episode, the power of persuasion, communicating solutions clearly. Welcome to the final episode of Ray's Problem Solvers. Today, we're talking about a crucial skill, the power of persuasion.
That's right, Alex. We've spent the entire series building critical and creative thinking muscles. Now, it's time to learn how to share those brilliant ideas and solutions with the world. This is episode 12, and it's all about communicating clearly and persuasively.
Exactly, Lisa. So we've guided our young thinkers through curiosity, embracing mistakes, asking great questions, brainstorming, analysis, choosing challenges, storytelling, design thinking, collaboration, and even navigating the digital world. Now, they've landed on a fantastic solution to a problem. What's next?
Well, they need to be able to tell someone. And not just tell, but convince them that their solution is the best one. Imagine a child who's figured out a way to make their classroom more energy efficient. They can't just sit on that idea. They need to present it, perhaps to the teacher or even the principal.
That's a perfect example. So, how do we help them communicate effectively? The first key is clarity. If an idea is muddled, it won't land. This means breaking down their solution into simple, understandable parts.
So, for our energy-saving classroom idea, instead of just saying, we need to save energy, they might explain, we can turn off the lights when we leave the room and unplug electronics when they're not in use. Two very clear, actionable steps.
Precisely. And it's not just about what they say, but how they say it. This is where we introduce the idea of a simple, logical structure. Think of it like building blocks. First, state the problem clearly. What's the issue they're trying to solve?
Like, our school uses a lot of electricity, and that's not good for the environment or our school's budget. That sets the stage.
Exactly. Then, introduce their proposed solution. This is the core of their thinking. Here's where they explain their brilliant idea, outlining those clear, actionable steps we just talked about.
So, after stating the problem, they'd present their plan for turning off lights and unplugging devices.
Right? And this is where persuasion really kicks in. They need to explain why their solution is good. What are the benefits? For our energy-saving example, the benefits are tangible.
If we do this, we'll use less electricity, which helps the planet, and it will save the school money. This money could be used for new books or fun activities. C. Even framing it with potential positive outcomes for others makes it more compelling.
Absolutely. And to make it even more persuasive, they should consider their audience. Who are they talking to? A teacher might respond to educational benefits, while a principal might be more interested in cost savings.
That's such an important point, Alex. Tailoring the message. If our student was talking to younger kids, they might use more visual aids or a simpler story. If they're presenting to the school board, they'd need more data and research.
And what about evidence? Young problem solvers can often back up their ideas with observations or even simple experiments. Did they notice a lot of lights left on? Did they test how much energy electronics draw when not actively in use?
So they're not just saying turn off lights, they can add, I notice the hallway lights are often left on during lunch, and that's a lot of wasted energy. That's a concrete observation.
Yes, concrete examples and evidence are powerful. They make the argument more believable. We've touched on telling, but also, sometimes, showing is even better. This is where the idea of a visual representation or a simple model of their solution comes in.
Like a poster showing the problem and their solution, or even a simple chart demonstrating potential savings.
Exactly. A visual can often convey information more quickly and memorably than words alone. Remember episode 10 on prototyping? That skill comes back here not just for building, but for presenting.
So, to recap the structure for persuasive communication, we have state the problem, present the solution, explain the benefits, consider the audience, and use evidence or visuals. Is that right?
That's a fantastic summary for building a persuasive case. Now, let's talk about practicing this. Like any skill, communication and persuasion improve with practice. Encourage them to present their ideas out loud, perhaps to you, to a sibling, or even to a pet.
My dog has heard many a persuasive argument for extra treats.
And it's all about refining their message. They'll learn what resonates, what questions people ask, and how to adjust their approach. This is where we empower them to be confident. Confidence in their ideas and confidence in their ability to share them.
So, it's not just about having a great solution, but about having the courage and the tools to advocate for it. This really ties together everything we've covered in this series. It's about being a well-rounded, engaged thinker and doer.
It absolutely is. From sparking curiosity to solving problems, and now to clearly communicating those solutions. This is what it means to raise problem solvers. They are the future, and by equipping them with these skills, we're empowering them to make a real difference.
This has been an incredible journey, Alex. We've explored so many facets of critical and creative thinking. We started with the foundation of curiosity in episode 1, igniting that spark.
And we learned the immense power of mistakes and failure in episode 2 as essential stepping stones.
Then we delved into the art of questioning, moving beyond the simple why, to explore the exciting possibilities of what if in episode 3.
Episode 4 unleashed our collective creativity with brainstorming adventures, showing how multiple minds can spark even more brilliant ideas.
We armed ourselves with the Detective's Toolkit in episode 5, developing those all-important analytical skills to understand problems deeply.
Episode 6 focused on puzzle power, teaching us how to select engaging challenges that truly stretch our abilities.
Then, we discovered storytelling as a superpower in episode 7, building both narrative and logic to make ideas compelling.
The design thinker's journey in episode 8 introduced empathy and user-centered problem solving, reminding us to always start with the people we're trying to help.
Episode 9 explored collaborative challenges, highlighting the strength and innovation that comes from working together effectively.
And episode 10 took us from abstract ideas to tangible outcomes with prototyping and experimentation, turning concepts into reality.
We then navigated the digital playground in episode 11, learning to think critically in our increasingly online world.
And finally, here we are in episode 12, mastering the power of persuasion, communicating our solutions clearly and confidently.
It feels like a complete arc, Alex. We've equipped parents with so many tools to foster these essential skills in their children. Thank you for guiding us through this entire series.
The pleasure has been all mine, Lisa. And thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this journey. We hope you feel empowered to raise the next generation of confident, creative, and capable problem solvers. Thanks for listening to the series.